So with the recent release of Godzilla x Kong, the Monsterverse is once again in conversation, with the film smashing all box office expectations and proving that Godzilla vs. Kong 2021 wasn't just a fluke. Of course, coming off the hype of Godzilla -1 doesn't hurt it at all. But I think it's worth noting that both Godzilla and Kong as characters have, at this point, properly entered the public zeitgeist as ones to look out for when going to the movies. The public love these characters now. These are well-known, well-established, and now well-beloved characters. Not to say that's never been the case, but after King of the Monsters underperformed to expectations in 2019, there was certainly a hesitance on Legendary's part when it came to continuing the franchise. Godzilla vs. Kong was not so subtly set up to work as a finale for the Monsterverse in case it also bombed, which, given its release period and the fact it was released day and date on streaming, it's actually quite insane that the film managed to rake in as much as it did, or really anything at all. There's a reason it's often cited as the first major box office success post-COVID, and that's because it sort of was. Everything was working against it, and now, even in an era where people are much more hesitant to go to theaters, the series continues to prove itself as being able to draw in large crowds. So with all that being said, I don't think anyone will be surprised when we learn about the Monsterverse is indeed continuing. But it's odd, because for the first time since, okay, not that long ago, but even so, even after this grand resurgence, we sit in an odd period where we have no idea what's next. Back in October of 2015, we pretty much received a slate of films right off the bat. Like any hungry cinematic universe looking to make it big, at the time we had just received Godzilla 2014, the first film in the franchise, and we knew that at the very least a sequel to the film was on the way, with Gareth Edwards still being attached and rumors of it being a trilogy also being discussed. Then we also knew of Kong Skull Island, which was upcoming, and this announcement of a shared universe then confirmed a Godzilla vs. Kong film, so boom, slate. But since then, the closest we've gotten to is when we knew that both Skull Island anime and the Monarch show were coming. But that feels different due to the fact that we knew next to nothing about either of those shows, not even proper titles, and with both sort of being in limbo as to who knows if it'll even happen. Studios these days are all too happy to announce a project and then just never talk about it again, especially Warner Bros, so I think we all kind of expected that to be the case for both of these. Combine that with the fact that these were both pitched as TV series, leading many to believe they would just be smaller supplemental side content rather than a big continuation of the franchise, which I suppose it kind of is, but like, it feels like more. At least Monarch does, and you know what, I'm not going to complain about that. It wasn't until March of 2022 that we learned for sure a new film was in development, with the sequel to GVK, which was vague, but still, it was something. And for the longest time, rumored to be another solo Kong movie, which, I mean, you weren't far off. Now, however, we find ourselves in another strange state, where I think everyone is expecting Legendary to go all in and give us another big slate with an actual end goal to work towards, as GVK also sort of served as this unofficial first phase's finale, but the big question is, what is next? What could we and what are we most likely to see?
Wouldn't you like to know, Weather Boy?
Well,
where are your parents?
After that lengthy intro, I want to take a moment to theorize for myself what we'll be seeing next. I'm going to compile my own phase or so of a potential future of the Monsterverse. This is more about what I think is actually likely to happen rather than what I would personally want to see. Although, if this happened word for word as I'm about to say, I would be very happy, and I would die happy, alright? So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, a bit of that definitely worked its way in. Although I might touch upon my personal hopes and unlikely prayers for the future towards the end as well. But to kick us off, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters Season 2. This is another project I'm surprised hasn't been announced yet, given it consistently topped the top 10 charts for Apple TV, and has had a favorable reaction from pretty much everyone in the kaiju community. I fully expect this to release around 2025 to 6, about 2 years after it began airing in late 2023, and the reason I believe this is simple. I know exactly what they are planning. Exactly. Let me just get my tinfoil cap on. Alright, and oh yeah, spoilers if you haven't watched Season 1. Or GXK, or really any of the Monsterverse. I'd recommend checking those out if there's anything you care about spoilers for. But if not, or you are all caught up, Season 1 ended with the main cast being brought back up from the Pocket World Hollow Earth thingy, It's then revealed that not only has 2 years passed from the initial 2015 setting of the show, thanks to the established time dilation effect at play there, but also that they are now on Skull Island. This means they are currently on the Skull Island base in 2017, right? And besides being a cheeky nod to the release year of Kong Skull Island, which, I fully believe this also means that when the show comes back in another 2 years, that time will have passed in universe once again. Remember that younger actors will age more noticeably on camera, so doing an off-screen 4-year time jump when it's only 2 years later and the actors are still clearly younger could look weird. But skipping 2 of those years on screen and saving the next 2 for while the show is in production, that makes sense, right? So add 4 to 2015 and you have 2019. Now, Monsterverse fans, tell me what happened in 2019. Yeah, Season 1 was set after the events of Godzilla 2014. I think that Season 2 will be set during the events of King of the Monsters. AKA, this, and this. Holy fuck, yes. Yes, please, Daddy, my god, yes. Sorry. Furthermore, I think the show will actually show what Kong was up to during this time. I'm sure we'll have a B-plot over in the midst of the chaos during the main film's events, but beyond a quick name drop to Kong, we never actually saw what he was up to in King of the Monsters. We just knew he was there and existing. And considering how crazy everything was going, and we know that at some point between Kong Skull Island and GVK they built this fucking dome, I fully expect to have the show return to its 2-plot structure they used in Season 1, A-plot and B-plot. But instead of jumping around in time, we jump around the world to 2 separate teams just trying to survive this cataclysmic event. Boom! Mic drop. I mean, I'm not crazy, am I? The timing of the 2 years gap and the actors aging makes too much sense, as well as 2 years to make another 10 episodes feels about right for how a high effort and budget show like this would be made. I'm pretty sure the first season had a similar turnaround time. Furthermore, people have been clamoring for a proper Ghidorah return, and they could use this as a sort of retcon of some kind for reasoning in how he might have survived beyond just his skull in GVK. I'm thinking we'd see a Monarch scientist pocketing some vials of Ghidorah scales from his body, and that he got access to at some point, and then shadily walking off. Ha, yeah, I'm sure that won't be important later, but this is the opportunity to set that up. Although, while I'm on this, I should say I don't know how confident I am that Skull Island anime will receive a second season. For as much as I think it deserves, and kinda needs one, the show didn't generate much talk or hype when it released, and I don't know if Netflix would see it as worth it to begin production on another season. I hope I'm wrong. I actually think the show is pretty underrated, but I don't know. And if Netflix did do that thing where they make like 20 episodes at a time, but then release them in chunks as multiple seasons so they can avoid paying their animators properly, well, then we'd already have Season 2. So I don't think they did that. Which I guess is good, but it also means we currently have no confirmed future of this show, and I'll be honest, as much as I like it, it's probably going to be decanonized eventually. Like, I don't think they'll ever come out and say it, but I fully believe that at some point something will just contradict the show's existence, and that'll be it. But for now, it's kind of in this weird limbo state, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll get announced tomorrow that we're getting 5 more seasons in a movie. Next up, we have Godzilla x Kong. Okay, so yeah, another Godzilla and Kong crossover movie with a really bad title, because I suck at making those, is basically all but confirmed by this point. I wouldn't be surprised if it even gets announced while I'm working on this video. Wingard clearly wants to do it, has discussed several potential plans for a threequel, perhaps even involving Destroyah, and hint, the title, and there is zero financial reason not to do it from Legendary's perspective. Of everything else I will discuss, not only do I think this is already in pre-production as we speak, but I think an announcement is right around the corner. It just makes too much sense. Will it be weird to have half the franchise basically consist of crossover movies by this point? Yeah, but at the same time, how cool is it we basically have 3 Avengers films back to back? I mean, I've been pretty open about GVK being my least favorite Monsterverse project, and yeah, GXK just barely scales above it for me. So a third Wingard movie wouldn't be the highest on my personal wish list, but I can't deny these are popular, and people really love them. And that's awesome. These are the films that not only saved the Monsterverse, but will ensure its future going forward, so can I really complain? It also helps that Monarch running alongside these films, we can still get a taste of more grounded Monsterverse alongside the more campy action that Wingard brings to the table. I mean, we're getting more of both sides. What is there to complain about? So it's not like we're missing out on anything with these. If I had to guess, despite him not actually saying Destroyah would be in the film, merely mentioning him in the same breath as a sequel, I do think it's pretty likely that they will do him, as long as Toho allows it, and why wouldn't they? Toho's been pretty vocally supportive of the Monsterverse, and I don't think Wingard would directly name the beast in an interview he knew would make the biggest word in the headline if he wasn't trying to subtly tease us. Like, he wouldn't mention that, because he knew we'd say this, go crazy for it, unless he was planning to do it. So, yeah, if it happens, which it is, we're getting Destroyah, which we are. So I fully expect to get some kind of adaptation of GVD and GXK3. Wow, those titles. Just maybe without killing off Godzilla, as I think, thanks to the success of -1, the first project post the Wingard trilogy will be... Actually, does Godzilla die in Godzilla vs. Destroyah? I haven't actually seen that movie yet. It's on my watch list. A lot of the old ones are. I'll get to it. Godzilla, Dawn of Gigan. Again, ignore the dumb title. I suck with those. I mean, after the lightning success of the franchise in the last year alone, is this really a shock they'd finally be willing to give Godzilla another shot? He quite literally birthed this franchise back in 2014, so it's a no-brainer to finally conclude that originally planned trilogy. Now, trying to think of creatives to helm this is hard. I doubt Wingard would. He feels more like the guy the studio will return to for the big crossover films or for Kong, and even beyond that, the guy clearly finds Kong to be much more interesting a character to work with than Godzilla, which, fair enough. Both GVK and GXK are basically just Kong movies, starring Godzilla, sort of meaning that Kong has indeed completed his trilogy, or at this point quadrilogy, before Godzilla did, which is so weird because by the time we got that first crossover movie, Kong had 1 and Godzilla had 2. Numbers are weird. It's also weird because these are often called just Godzilla movies, but like, he's in them, but they're more Kong movies. It just sounds better to call them Godzilla movies. Anyway, rant over. If I had to guess, we'd probably see the return of either Gareth Edwards, given that 2014 is now nostalgic, and I don't believe he's attached to anything else at the moment.
Hey, Skit, do you know who else has dementia?
Or we'd see Dougherty return. Dougherty? I'm so sorry. Personally, I'd be happy either way. Both directors offer very different flavors of Godzilla, but both are ones I'm massive fans of. I love both of these movies. But if I had to be honest, I'd probably more want to see Dougherty return. And Bear McCreary, please, I'm begging you, the Monsterverse soundtracks have not been the same since he left, except the Monarch theme, that theme slaps. I do not want Junkie XL become the new franchise music guy, please. The reason I'd mainly want to return to the King of the Monsters style of 2014 is because we have Monarch to give us that grounded style. Even Skull Island's tone lives on in Skull Island. Yeah, great name there, guys. But G19's epic scale and godlike implications haven't really been replicated anywhere else. So to see them return with a full Godzilla film would be awesome. If I had to choose a plot for it, I'd probably just pick Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan against Gigan. Rodan has been missing since 2019, so it'd be cool to see him actually work together with Godzilla in a movie, and leaning into the alien threats that Ghidorah teased in the last one, we can use Gigan to begin subtly teasing the next big crossover event. Anyone who has watched the Millennium Era films knows exactly where I'm going with this. I fully expect the Exilians to be more properly teased, if not flat out appearing here, and for Gigan to be completely destroyed. But they find out somehow, or maybe an end credit scene shows us this, or something, that he isn't the only Gigan, giving us a tease towards Gigan Sawblade thing from Final Wars and Monster X. And yeah, I think that goes without saying, but due to the insane power scaling we've seen in the Monsterverse, normal Gigan here is going to have to be very properly overpowered to justify being a threat against these three, which is just a symptom of it being a franchise. Not much to do for that, but I still think you could get those godlike implications of the original King of the Monsters film, even with this insane power scaling we have from the crossover movies.
遗忘遗忘都遗忘去年的烦恼和姑娘
Kong, Hollow Earth. Kind of funny that despite being the most characterized monster in the universe, we're only just now getting his actual technical second completely solo film.
You get nothing! You lose!
But yeah, here we are, a brand new Kong movie set in Hollow Earth. I imagine this film would primarily deal with Kong and his relationship to the new baby Kong introduced in GXK, and likely built upon further in GXK Destroyah. this film would probably see a new original villain, perhaps someone else from that Kong tribe we were introduced to in GXK. And I like the idea of it being a fully monster film. Maybe humans make small cameos just to tie the tribe in that we met in GXK, but for the most part, we primarily just focus on Kong becoming king of this new Hollow Earth, Great Ape Society, while juggling Parenthood. So, basically Aquaman 2 but with giant monkeys. I fully imagine that Adam Wingard would probably return to helm this project, unless he's involved in the next one, which we'll get to. But given how much he's done for the big lug already, and the fact that he set up a lot of these plot points in his own movies, I'd be shocked if he doesn't at least have some sort of say in the production of this film. This, of course, means the next film can bring in some new blood creatively, although, given it's the big one, who knows? Godzilla x Kong, Destroy All Monsters, and Godzilla x Kong, Final Wars. That's right, we're doing a two-parter, baby. This is our Infinity War Endgame thing. Yeah, we're doing Final Wars as the grand two-part finale. The Exilians are invading. The human cast mainly consists of characters from the Monarch show, since they are actually established and developed, so we're finally seeing them in the movies. And since this is a big endgame moment for the series, it's alright if we require a little context on the human side, especially since most casuals are just coming for the monsters anyway, and don't really care about the humans. The Exilians mind control Titans on Earth, besides Godzilla, and this time Kong. But it's up to the two monsters to either free the rest from mind control, like Mothra, Rodan, and any other fan favorites they don't want to kill off, or to just flat out kill them. Because, let's be honest here, beyond Mothra, Godzilla does not give a fuck if he kills any of these guys, even if it isn't a fault. I meant to say fault. Rest in peace, Skilla, my beloved. By the end of the film, we are introduced to Monster X and Ultra Gigan, or whatever his name was, something like that. Sawblade Gigan, you know what I'm talking about. This would be an ultimate Portals moment, a bunch of rescued monsters helping out Kong and Godzilla against the combined might of Monster X and Gigan. And, wait, sorry, why is Monster X cracking like an egg? And oh my god, it's Ghidorah! That guy was stealing Ghidorah scales back in Monarch? Yeah, he was actually an Exilian. Exilian? I think I've been saying it wrong this whole video. Holy shit, it's all coming together. Every major monster from the first phase is here. Hell, even throwing some Skullcrawlers and Mutos, because why not? Shimo's definitely in here, and this is the big endgame event for the Monsterverse, so we gotta get everyone back. The ultimate monster mash. We finally learn Ghidorah's origins, meet the Exilians, and have these monsters in one big movie. Well, two big movies. So, in conclusion, the ultimate monster brawl. 5 movies and a show. About equivalent to the first phase in films and stuff. And I don't think this would be the finale either, unless they stopped making money. This would just be the next big thing to build up to. How likely is all this? Well, naturally, the further out you get, the less likely it becomes. I fully believe that GXK and Monarch Season 2 are going to happen eventually, and a Godzilla 3 is probably inevitable, although I'm sure I'm way off plot-wise, and then beyond that, who knows. But hey, I can dream, can't I? And believe me, any excuse to show Zilla on screen in the Monsterverse is a welcome one. And that's exactly what the big finale offers. That's right, baby, Godzilla 98 is canon now! Okay, no, it's not, but it would be funny, so just let me headcanon this somehow. As for where you take the franchise from here, who knows? Monster movies are all about topping each other in scale, but look, all I'm saying is after the Exilian counter, if Godzilla gets infected with a weird venom virus that makes him evolve and glow red and, evolve, a Shin Godzilla arc ending with him being the ultimate bad guy would be sick as hell. Give us a Monsterverse Shin Godzilla achieving his 8th form and going full evil mode and just becoming a cosmic entity, and then maybe kill him off with everyone else having to come together to destroy him, and introduce Mini Goji or something to continue the series from there with a younger Godzilla who, let's be honest here, probably gets ninjagoed and ages up in an episode or something, just to, actually continue the Godzilla franchise. The point is, that's all just random spitballing. I would pay good money to see Monsterverse Goji go evil and turned into Shin Godzilla, believe me, but I doubt we're gonna get that. The seed is there with Godzilla Evolutions thanks to GXK, though. Just saying. Anyway, let me know down below what your dream Monsterverse phase would be. I'd love to hear it. This stuff is always so interesting for me to look back on and see, and I love hearing what people come up with for this stuff. So go crazy. Give me a pitch that includes a Zilla movie, or a Jet Jaguar appearance, or a Mothra movie. I didn't put one in here because I don't know how likely it is for her to actually get a solo movie, but who knows? I mean, she was brought back on GXK, so it could happen. Anyway, sorry I haven't been uploading as of late. Life's been crazy, and believe me, abandoning my channel for a quarter of a year right after it was starting to get some traction was not intentional. But, anyway, I gotta go destroy City now, so, Alright, so jumping into it, I don't need to give the whole spiel about what the Monsterverse is. You already know, but if for some reason you really don't, then I'd recommend watching out my first few videos in the franchise. Anyway, the lore of the Monsterverse past isn't what this video is about. Nah. This is about the future. That is 100% guaranteed, as I've foreseen it in my crystal ball that I definitely own. And already, the results of my bold predictions are beginning to bear fruit. Monarch has indeed been renewed for a second season, along with other spin-offs, which, I mean, I didn't talk about, but don't worry guys, I def foresaw it, and while Wingard is no longer involved in the next film, it does appear to still be another Godzilla x Kong movie. Although, if I'm being entirely truthful, I'm actually more partial towards a Godzilla 3 next, but hey, technically my last video hasn't been disproven entirely yet. So, make your bets now for how long that'll last. Anywho, to give a brief recap of everything I did last time, in case you have forgotten or just want to jump into this video without the context, I predicted we would be seeing Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Season 2. I'm going to be giving all these guys a date, generally what I think is most realistic. 2025 feels realistic, given the 2-year production cycle per season, which is becoming a commonality amongst big streaming shows like this. Godzilla x Kong, the Destroyah Dynasty. Of course, this was based on what Wingard had been talking about before he left the project, but who knows what might realistically take its place now. I feel 2026 is probably the earliest we'll see whatever this does turn out to be, though. And if I'm being entirely honest, okay, yeah, they probably aren't doing Destroyah, fine, but, you know, they haven't confirmed they're not, so again, my old video still bears fruit! Godzilla, Dawn of Gigan. This is where we get into the real speculation. The other two were simple enough to guess with context clues at that time, which of course comes down to the fact that the big lizard makes money, but from here it's largely speculation mixed with pure copium. My favorite kind of coping. Kong Hollow Earth. Big Monkey finally gets a sequel. Yeah. And then the big 2-part finale, Godzilla x Kong Destroy All Monsters, and Final Wars. And then the big 2-part finale to our mock Phase 2. Bringing the Exilians, they turn all monsters on Earth evil, except Godzilla and Kong, and the two will have to either kill or free all the monsters they can in order to stick it to the final boss, Kaiser Ghidorah, and Ultra Gigan. This would have been set up throughout every prior project, with normal Gigan appearing first in Godzilla 3, and us seeing Ghidorah again in Monarch Season 2, which is set during the events of King of the Monsters, and sets the foundation for his return. After that climactic conclusion, we see Kong and Godzilla returning to their separate parts of the world, Kong returns to Hollow Earth, and Godzilla remaining the Alpha, up on the surface. Clearly not to be challenged by any other monster after this film. Well, except for one. You see, there's one monster that never learns, one that never takes the time to think about their failures and always tries again, only ever leading to the worst possible outcome. That monster, of course, is the human being. Which brings us into Phase 3. You ready for this? 2034, Monarch G-Team, Season 1. Releasing 2 years after the finale to the Exilian arc, as I am dubbing it, a brand new sequel series to Monarch, Legacy of Monsters will begin, this time dubbed G-Team. In the wake of the chaos caused over the recent years by monster-related destruction, Monarch has put more focus into its military division, which was first seen in Godzilla, King of the Monsters, back in 2019, the G-Team. We bring over some characters from Legacy of Monsters, really any who have survived, but this isn't exactly their forte. This isn't a team for studying monsters, it's a team for finding a way to combat them. The show would follow a similar format to Legacy of Monsters, 10 episodes, each building up with a larger plot, while also making sure each episode has its own distinction to separate itself from others while aiding the week-by-week release. But, due to its more action-oriented approach, we see more monsters established throughout the Monsterverse. A few original titans and one big guy who starts making a ruckus, Anguirus. An evolved titan form of the spiky dinosaur that I forgot the name of, has emerged from Hollow Earth and started causing some trouble. Meanwhile, Godzilla is hunting him down. We follow the G-Team scrambling from point A to point B trying to intercept the clashing titans and prevent human casualties, while also trying to take out Anguirus. As at this point, they've learned they cannot take the fight to Godzilla, or at least, the G-Team has. But one character introduced in this show isn't on the G-Team itself, but rather the research wing of Monarch. This is Dr. Genichiro Shiragami. He's He's been developing a new bioweapon that might be key to ending the Titan domination over Earth, and while he's kept it under wraps, as a lot of our main characters would probably be at least somewhat against complete Titan genocide, he's gotten funding from the higher-ups at Monarch. This bioweapon plan is dubbed none other than Operation Biolante. That brings us to 2035, Godzilla Biohazard. A year after Season 1 of G-Team, we get our first film of the phase, Godzilla Biohazard, follows Dr. Shiragami enacting his bioweapon plan, while Godzilla is battling another smaller Titan. The G-Team managed to somehow infect Godzilla with it, a virus that's main goal is to break down his very cellular structure, eventually leading to becoming completely weak. The plan is to infect every monster at this in time, but Godzilla, being the king of the monsters, makes the perfect test subject. After managing to seemingly weaken Godzilla and get a good hit in, Godzilla begins spouting large amounts of blood, much more than he ever has, and he retreats into the ocean nearby. We then see Dr. Shiragami collecting some of the Godzilla blood. We also learn that his daughter is sick. In a change from the original Biolante film, the daughter is still alive, but had been injured gravely in a Titan attack during one of the previous films, leaving her almost completely bedridden, thus giving Genichiro a motive for why he wants to kill Godzilla. He uses the Godzilla blood he collected and attempts to make a cure for his daughter, but unknowingly mixes some of the Biolante bioweapon in during an accident. When the girl is injected, she begins the transformation into the Biolante we all know. This film will take a mix between full-on body horror and that of a tragedy, as the daughter slowly loses her mind, transforming into a giant plant monster. Throughout the film, we also cut back to Godzilla, who is clearly having adverse effects to the virus, but not the expected ones. While the gushing blood at first looked like a sign that the virus had worked, it is now beginning to look a whole lot worse. While it is indeed melting away at his very being, he's also regenerating any lost flesh in a haphazard way, revealing lots of bare flesh and an overall terrifying looking appearance for Godzilla. His blood continues to burn up from the stress, and Godzilla gets a lot more antagonistic. At first I believed to be a result of him simply being angry about the virus. Eventually, it worsens into him becoming the monster humanity had always feared he was. As his dorsal plates glow a deep red, he unleashes his most powerful attack in the Monsterverse yet, an insanely precise Omega Beam that pierces through a human city for no reason other than pure anger and agony. Then, the worst case scenario happens. Biolante breaks loose and begins to threaten Godzilla's reign. Combine this with the awful state Godzilla is in, and an all-out war is inevitable. The two titans battle, and eventually, Biolante is put out of her misery, with Dr. Shiragami destroying all of the research that it cannot be used again, and taking his own life so that no one can use him to get at it. A hauntingly dark moment that mirrors the ending to the very first Godzilla film all the way back in 1954. The film ends with a shot of the monster that humanity has created. Godzilla roars into the sky and suddenly begins to glow red once again. Only this time he isn't attacking. He begins to grow, his bones snapping into place and his tail reaching brand new lengths. His emaciated skin giving way to an exposed skeleton with the red glow slowly turning purple. Shin Godzilla has just achieved his second form. As he returns to the ocean to cool down, he lets out a loud roar and we cut to black. So, when I said this film had a body horror mixed with tragedy, I wasn't just referring to the human who unfortunately becomes Biolante, although she definitely counts. I was also referring to Godzilla. Both of these monsters are victims of circumstance and the folly of humanity, and it will soon lead to their very extinction. 2036, Monarch G-Team, Season 2. After the events of Biohazard, Monarch and humanity as a whole are understandably on edge. Godzilla is stronger than ever and looking to destroy anything in his path. At least he hasn't gone out of his way to destroy any cities yet. All the same, Monarch must prepare, and with the Alpha Titan having disappeared, it's up to the G-Team to make sure the other Titans stay in place. The main threat this season is Rodan. He's always been tricky, but with Godzilla seemingly on vacation, Rodan seizes the opportunity to try and become the new Alpha. The G-Team throw everything they have at him, being very careful to avoid any more bioweapons, of course. But in the ending of the season, the thing that really stops him is the return of the King. Godzilla shows up in all of his Form 2 glory and beats the ever-living shit out of Rodan, almost immediately. The big bad we've been playing with all season is chump change compared to this new Godzilla, his purple Omega Beam snapping through one of his legs as he retreats. Thankfully, Rodan still has the speed advantage and is able to escape, making his way back to his volcano and quite literally re-sealing himself away out of fear. And while the G-Team is cheering at first, they soon realize that Godzilla has just turned his gaze to them. Where once Godzilla would then peacefully walk away, now he's looking for the fight. Thus, the entire finale is dedicated to a massive battle between everything that Monarch can throw at Godzilla in this brand new ultimate form. We really get to sink our teeth into this second form introduced at the ending of Biohazard, and of course, we keep his involvement in the show a secret, so when he shows up and mops the floor with our heroes, it's a total surprise. In the end, Godzilla returns to the ocean after heating up once again, but not before leveling the city, killing some major characters and leaving Monarch in tatters. Godzilla does not evolve again in this finale, but the implication that he will continue to do so remains terrifyingly present. Godzilla again completely disappears from Monarch's radar, with them not sure if he's even in the Hollow Earth, and praying that when he comes again, they can be prepared. 2037, King Kong. So by this point, it's been a minute since we've last seen Kong, but with Godzilla's disappearance, the world needs a new alpha for the Titans. Rodan tried and got clapped, and the other Titans are still causing chaos. So Monarch brings Kong out from Hollow Earth in hopes of instating him as the new alpha. We bring back Gia from the GXK films and follow Kong as he faces off against a new Titan threat that has emerged. We haven't had a fully original new Titan in a minute as of this film, and I want to keep that element alive in the Monsterverse, so let's have Kong go up against something big and completely new. Overall, this is going to be more focused on reinstating Kong. We can't have him chilling in Hollow Earth the whole time, and I also like the idea of having a slightly more fun and comedic film focused on Kong just becoming king of the overworld. Something new. So, here he's embroiled in the coming conflict, but by the end, Kong is king, the new alpha, and something that will no doubt attract Godzilla in time. 2037, Rodan. A project people have been clamoring for is a Rodan project, and I get it. He's my favorite monster out of the big five, and I think there is some potential. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure that it would fare that well at the box office with general audiences. It could, but it might be a bit risky. So instead, we test the waters with another spin-off show, specifically a limited one-season miniseries. And I know, ever since Marvel poisoned the proverbial well with their miniseries, basically just being stretched-out films, people have been wary of these. But trust me, that's not what we're doing. This is basically just a single-season show, similar to the Monarch shows by this point. 10 episodes to test the water for big monster spin-offs. This one is also fairly detached from the ongoing storyline, with it instead focused on just being a really cool Rodan prequel. Oh yeah, that word. This is a prequel, set way before any other Monsterverse project, bar maybe some comics which I haven't read. This is set during some of those early cave paintings seen in stuff like King of the Monsters, an ancient society terrorized by Rodan, until they can find some way to trick him into his volcanic prison. Talk about underdogs. Again, nothing too much to add to the current storyline, just a fun spin-off. Remember when those were commonplace? 2038, Mothra, Operation Battra. Now, while the Rodan film is a risk given he's somewhat unknown to casuals, Mothra on the other hand might stand more of a chance. Not only has she had more Monsterverse appearances, but she also has a history of solo films that go beyond the number 1. And while those have never been too financially successful either in the past, with the Monsterverse backing, I think she could pull it off. Of course, we've got a contingency. If for some reason the Rodan series were to underperform, then we just rename this film and recenter it as none other than a Monarch G-Team film, as it will star all of the core cast from that series, with Mothra remaining the primary monster for the film, or at least on the hero side. Mothra has always been known as the more heroic monster alongside Kong, so when the legendary beast known as Titanus Battra, see what I did there, makes its appearance, it is destined that Mothra will defeat it. We can throw Kong in too to help out and bring in some more butts to seats, and it makes sense given he is currently the alpha who is to watch over and make sure no monsters are causing any chaos, which Battra is very much so doing. I'd also just like to see a team up with Kong and Mothra while Godzilla is still missing. I think it'd be neat. 2038, Monarch G-Team, Season 3, the final season. Blah. So, yeah, the final season of Monarch G-Team, with the world seemingly returning to some level of stability with Kong and Mothra keeping any rogue monsters in their place. G-Team knows it's only a matter of time until Godzilla shows up again. And sure enough, he does. Throughout the series, Shin Godzilla makes his return, and by the end of the series evolves once again into his third form, with this one being a lot more notable than just a height increase. Sprouting off of Godzilla's tail, large, roughly 10 to 20 feet humanoid titan hybrid monsters begin to appear, quickly running through cities and ravaging everything. These things are tiny compared to Godzilla, but still tower over the average human in a terrifying way. and they're going to make up the bulk of what the G-Team will be fighting throughout the series, which is going to be a lot more serialized than the past 2 seasons have been. In a time when Godzilla has gotten so large that it becomes hard to really compare his scale, these beasties help retain that. Meanwhile, the third form also sees Godzilla grow again, achieving an astounding height of about 500 feet, only 100 shy of the current largest holder for the title in Earth. His skin evolves around himself into a blackened, lumpy shape, while his neck and face become more exposed. His eyes bulge out slightly and gloss over silver, similar to Shin whenever he unleashes his attacks. By the ending of the series, Godzilla has not only returned, but has just declared war on life itself. 2039, Godzilla, all-out attack. So the world has just gone to shit, right? Most major civilizations that Godzilla has visited have crumbled, and those that haven't are simply waiting. Kong and Mothra cannot contain the chaos of the other monsters, who at this point have gone on a full rampage, similar to what we see in King of the Monsters. Meanwhile, Monarch scrambles to build a giant ark to carry what remains of humanity off into space, a la Monster Planet's opening. Despite being named after Godzilla, we actually spend a lot of time on Mothra and the G-Team. Meanwhile, we intermittently cut to Kong trying to hold back the other monsters. He hasn't had a chance to challenge Godzilla, but is clearly gearing to, which will be the setup for our next and final film in this arc. However, this film puts the ball in Mothra's court, while the G-Team try to evacuate cities and battle off the Titan-human hybrids. However, things, as always in a Part 1, end badly, with Godzilla killing Mothra. The G-Team managed to retrieve one of her eggs, but things are bleak. The world is at its end, and just when things couldn't get any worse, Godzilla evolves again. This time the changes are much more pronounced. Enormous wings, large enough to dwarf Ghidorah, sprout from Godzilla's back. He grows to a staggering 650 feet, making him the tallest incarnation, and an enormous crystalline structure forms from his back and shoulders. Shin Godzilla's fourth form, Space Godzilla. Most of the arcs that humanity has been building are destroyed, leaving only a handful, and their launch is delayed. Godzilla doesn't want humanity gone, he wants them extinct. Finally, Kong manages to arrive, setting the stage for the finale. 2040, Godzilla vs. King Kong, Shin. The final battle, the ultimate rematch. Whereas our last phase saw every monster we could cram coming into the fray, this one is a lot more subdued, only focusing on some of the key players, mainly Godzilla vs. King Kong. Meanwhile, Monarch live up to their names and manage to protect the Mothra egg, leading to another Mothra larvae being born, and at one point, Kong frees Rodan from the volcano, getting him to help out in the fight alongside himself against Godzilla. The fight is rough, and to really emphasize the stakes, Rodan will be fully killed here, along with several other background monsters, but in the end, the real Godzilla is able to peek through the Shin virus and ultimately sacrifices himself to restore balance. On the eve of his fifth form, he manages to launch himself into space and into the heart of the very sun itself, exploding and dying so that the Earth can again return to its natural state. Leaving the title of Alpha in the hands of Kong, and eventually Zuko. Mothra is reborn, and the dwindling population of humanity have a choice to make. In the end, they decide to leave on their ark, find a new homeworld, and leave the Earth to the monsters. There's nothing left for them on Earth, and the skies have become irradiated. The grounds still lurk with the remaining Titan humanoids, so Monarch gathers everyone they can. Any humans with significant ties to monsters like Kong or Mothra say goodbye, and we end on a bittersweet but hopeful note. That is, until the end credit scene begins. After Godzilla exploded into the sun itself, a single chunk of his flesh managed to survive, crashing back down to Earth eventually. It lands on a massive crater. The final scene shows a single vine curling around it as a rose grows in real time above it, as the hunk of Godzilla flesh slowly molds and becomes one with the Earth. The Godzilla theme plays, cut to black. So, that wasn't too dark, was it? The big thing I want to do with the ending here is to reflect that man cannot live with the monster and vice versa. All too often in these films, we see monsters trampling humans or humans provoking the monsters. Peace simply hasn't been an option, and I wanted this era to kind of reflect that. Godzilla goes full evil and becomes an active threat to humanity, and the human side focuses heavily on the G-Team, whose whole purpose is to take the fight to the monsters. In the end, the best thing for both is to find new horizons. Of course, this doesn't have to be the definitive end. If that scene there at the end didn't give it away, like EA when it comes to making bad business decisions, I've got one more left in me. With the way that everything ended, we're obviously going towards a more sci-fi approach. I mean, it's pretty clear I'm setting up the idea of adapting some elements from the Monster Planet trilogy. And while I know that trilogy has never been all too popular, I do think it has some great ideas in there. And I think the one flaw with those 3 movies is the execution. So if you bring some of those ideas over, I think they could be really fun and make for some really cool, ideas. So that's the hope of what I could do if I do make another video like this, is I really want to take some ideas that were in bad movies and just, play with them, do some fun stuff with that. But if you want that, better like and subscribe, folks. That's right, this video only got made because the last one did so well, comparatively. And while I'm still working on plenty of other videos from FNAF to DC, wait, what? You want to see more Monsterverse? Then just keep proving it's viable, because I'm here for it. So let me know your dream pitches down below. I've seen tons of people suggesting stuff like a Gamera film or a Rodan trilogy or some crazy stuff like that, and I love hearing it. So pitch it to me, give me some juicy story deets. I want to know what you guys can cook, alright? So be sure to let me know down below how stupid my ideas are and how awesome yours are, because I guarantee if you have a cool idea, it's probably better than my stuff. So let me hear it, because I love hearing that stuff. It's really cool to look through. Anyway, I've got a city full of innocent civilians to ravage ruthlessly while high on opioids, so ciao! So, it's been a minute. The Monsterverse is still trucking steadily along, and at this point I think I can firmly call that first video outdated. But since when has that ever stopped me? I teased something at the end of my last video, and damn it, I'm going to follow through. Because, hear me out, I've got a plan. So, to recap for those of you who didn't watch my last 2 Monsterverse videos, I put forth a pitch for what I'd like to see become the future of the Monsterverse. What started as a realistic pitch eventually evolved into full-on fanfiction by the latter half, and at this point, I'm just owning it as such. So, for this video, I intend to offer a proper conclusion to my massive Monsterverse saga that I've pitched. I would again recommend checking out at least the second video before jumping headfirst into this one, but if you want to keep rolling along too, here's the gist of what you missed. That rhymed. Following on from the ending of Godzilla x Kong, we have a saga of films, dedicated to building up to a massive Destroyah monster / Final Wars event. Things such as my pitch to Legacy of Monsters Season 2 tease the return of Ghidorah via alien cloning, with said aliens coming down and invading big time using Gigan Rex and Monster X Kaiser Ghidorah, which results in every other known monster in the Monsterverse by that point coming together and duking it out, saving the day. Things are all good until, well, they aren't. When Godzilla starts to cause trouble for Monarch, one particularly vengeful scientist, angry at him for taking away his daughter, develops a virus capable of killing the monster. However, it backfires and begins to transform him into a mutating monster that becomes known as Shin Godzilla, evolving to several more powerful forms, and slowly losing his own mind and becoming evil. I mean, I guess it wasn't evil before, but indifferent to evil, he's bad. Kong takes over as the new Alpha Titan and leads an assault against Shin Godzilla, which results in his demise. However, as the fallout of it was so catastrophic, humanity is forced to flee the Earth, as it has simply become too dangerous if recent events regarding world-ending monster-related cataclysms are related. And thus, humanity leaves Earth in search of a new home, the existence of alien life giving them hope in this regard. However, behind them, on Earth, we see a single chunk of Shin Godzilla flesh clinging to a flower, hinting at a more earthy fate for our beloved lizard. Flash forward to now. With humanity in the stars and the monsters ruling the Earth, where does our story go from here? Will the humans and Titans ever find a peaceful way to coexist, and can this timeline be saved from the drab and dreary fate that we left off on previously? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z right now. You're watching that video right now. So, strap in, buckle up, and prepare for the conclusion to the WILLJEUM Monsterverse cinematic universe of monsters fighting monsters in a universe. Also called my pitch for short. That being said, going in, I do want to mention something about this last arc, or phase of sorts. It's going to be a lot more linear than my previous one. Rather than springing off into every which way, it's going to feel more conventionally like a big straight shoot to the end with a linear story, which isn't a bad thing by any means. I think I've got some of the most in-depth film descriptions here than I've had up until now, but it also means cutting back on the shows a bit. This whole phase is dedicated to our ending, so it'll be the first without a Monarch show, for example. That's mainly because, however, I've combined elements of what might be made of a Monarch show into the films themselves. But enough yapping. You just want to get the meat and potatoes, right? Well, grab some popcorn and smash that subscribe button, pretty please. Please. And off we go into the great, wide unknown. Godzilla Earth. A few years have passed since the events of the Shin War from the last phase, at least for the humans. For the sake of what Google tells me is the most likely habitable planet, let's say that they are on Kepler 62e. But I mean, at this point, we're fully in the sci-fi route, so take your pick and make something up if you want. This can be any old rock as long as it suits our needs. Humanity has a very shoddy base, but the planet is completely barren and lifeless, and their crops aren't growing. Things are dire, and humanity needs to do something fast. No other planet has been even half as habitable as this, and they're barely surviving here. So a group of humans decide that they should send a team to investigate Earth and see how things have changed, being fully aware of the fact that it will have been much longer on Earth than it had been for the humans due to time distortions or whatever. Anyway, with our team of new characters and a bunch of nameless military people collected, off they go back to Earth using several massive transport ships. Using cryosleep or something so that we can just skip from point A to point B. For the most part, this team will likely consist of brand new characters. However, leading the charge will be a fully grown-up Gia from the GVK films. By this point in their world and ours, both her and the actress playing her will have grown up, and I want to use that and have Gia essentially be the big badass in the Monarch ranks. She'll essentially be the main character of this final saga, with special importance placed on her in some of the upcoming films. So off the ship set, onward to Earth. However, upon arriving, something goes wrong right above orbit, and everyone is woken up, before the ship has auto-landed itself, alarms blaring. Everyone gets out of their future-y sci-fi sleep pods and begins scrambling around to discover that of the 4 or so ships sent to Earth, the first has disappeared, which is to set off alarms for the other ships. With us following the crew of the 3rd ship, they scramble around until they see a massive laser pierce the 2nd ship ahead of them, completely destroying it. The source of the laser isn't seen, but it appears to be coming from Earth. While the 3rd ship was able to narrowly dodge another laser shot at it, it manages to take out a wing, causing the ship to begin to crash onto the surface below. Everyone scrambles to their pods in hopes of safety, and we cut to black. Darkness. And then slowly, sound begins to fade back in. The sounds of a jungle? Before reawakening on the planet. Our survivors, led by Gia, come together to discover a vast expanse of forest and the super ancient remains of what was once a city surrounding them. Although they cannot identify what city, they are back on Earth. And while it's only been a handful of years for the humans, it has been well over a century on Earth. The humans salvage what they can from the wrecked ship and mourn the dead, only to realize that they are getting signal from the 4th ship, which had managed to evade the blasts and land safely. However, the signal is weak. Some humans stay behind and try to see what else they can salvage from the ship. Meanwhile, the main film follows Gia and the crew of survivors attempting to get from point A to point B, all the while dealing with the dangers of this new Earth, which they soon discover is overrun with dangerous new titans and monsters. Think Kong Skull Island, but with a big evil Godzilla roaming around, which, mind you, they soon discover, but not before discovering a more immediate threat. A large brutish titan discovers the part of our crew that had gone off to find the 4th ship, and begins to chase them. Overall, it's probably one of the smaller titans, around the size of the Frostvark from Legacy of Monsters for context, but still very capable of gobbling them up. While running, the team comes across a massive clearing. We see a massive hole seemingly going down into a hollow earth with smoldering edges as if it had been cleanly ripped through by a laser. The team also sees what seems to be a massive mountain moving in the distance. However, then, a loud roar is heard. The brand new titan that had been chasing our heroes loses interest in the team and blindly charges at the mountain, only for the mountain to turn around and absolutely eviscerate the smaller being, revealing itself to be an enormous, brand new Godzilla, shocking the team. Keep in mind, the last they knew, this guy was dead, and I mean like super dead, And knowing how dangerous he got in those latter years, seeing him alive is not a comforting sight. Realizing that Godzilla is headed in the same direction as where the 4th ship's signal is, the team realize they need to hurry to beat Godzilla to the punch. Godzilla is traveling over land and isn't moving at top speed, but even so, they realize they need to pick up the pace, giving us a seemingly impossible race against time. However, good news. The crew that had stayed behind with the ship managed to get some of the ground vehicles working, some kind of super fast land speeders. Keeping in contact with the land crew, they dispatch several to go pick them up and help them get to the 4th ship. However, things don't go so smoothly, as yet another Titan takes interest in the crew. This time, a fast-moving land Titan, one unbeknownst to the crew, but much larger than the one that had been chasing them earlier. So the comic relief guy names him Titanosaurus. They manage to outrun it, and eventually Godzilla Earth takes notice, leading to more of an actual battle. For the sake of comparison, let's say the nameless monster chasing them before was probably closer to 20 to 40 feet, and let's say Godzilla is about 300. Far from the biggest he's been, and smaller than the anime version of Godzilla Earth, but still large enough to stomp on the guy from earlier. Meanwhile, Titanosaurus is more around 200. Still smaller, but also very fast. In a change from his original Suitmation counterpart, and to help differentiate himself from the other Titans here. Because of his speed, he's able to actually put up a decent battle against Godzilla, but eventually he finds himself killed by the big lizard. While this battle is going on, the team manages to get everyone from the 4th ship evacuated. As they theorize Godzilla is singling them out because of the tech which he seems to be able to sense, something proven when Godzilla turns his focus on the ship and destroys it, with only a couple of their own ground vehicles able to escape. The finale is just the team attempting to outrun Godzilla back to the ship which they had arrived on, and just when it looks like they'll be able to, Godzilla lets out a loud, ear-piercing roar, one unlike anything we've ever heard, and then breaks off the chase. At first the team is cheering, as it's pretty much a straight shot to where they need to go, until an earthquake begins around them. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, a massive wall of green erupts from the ground, and then we get a look at it. Mirroring the best scene from the anime trilogy, an enormous Godzilla large enough to blot out the sun comes careening through the earth, stopping vehicles in their tracks, causing rubble and debris to rain down, squashing most of the nameless soldiers from the 4th ship. And probably at least one named guy for stakes, and also because I think that's funny in my little tormented mind. This is the real Godzilla Earth, standing at an unknowable height of 700 or so feet. The one we had seen earlier was nothing more than what? A clone? Some kind of puppet, or perhaps a child? Those are the last thoughts blazing through Gia's head as the very earth gives out from under her, and she and her team fall into the cavernous earth inside of their vehicles, ending the film. This leaves the crew of the surviving 3rd ship in an unknown state, and the crew of the 4th, along with Gia and her team, falling down into the depths below. Mothra Kingdom, Season 1. After this film, we wouldn't wait long before providing more Monsterverse content. Despite the more serialized nature of the saga, there is still a way of going about and providing more side content, and while I'm going to be much lighter on the show variety this time around, the one show we will be doing will be calling back to the origins of Monsterverse TV in general. You see, one thing I glazed over in my initial pitches, primarily because I had just completely forgotten, was that the initial idea for a G-Team series was that it would be a hyper-stylized animated series. Something I am entirely gung-ho about, and I kind of feel bad for forgetting, since I basically just said fuck it and made it a continuation of Legacy of Monsters. Combine that with me not continuing Skull Island since I was still trying to be realistic at the time, and yeah, it kind of looks like I just hate animation, which I promise I do not, so to make up for it, this series here will be the primary source of side content for this final phase. Focused on gorgeous anime stylizations, preferably helmed by an actual anime studio like Science Saru for their work on the Scott Pilgrim show, or White Fox for their work on ReZero, both which are absolutely goated shows you should go watch if you haven't. Anyway, Mothra Kingdom follows, well, Mothra, and an adaptation of the bug-like humans first seen in the Monster Planet trilogy as our human stand-ins. We do not see the humans from the first Godzilla film, but the film is implied to be set alongside and during the events of the series, with the ending of the series overlapping with the events of that film. Otherwise, it's completely standalone. The series is largely episodic, with Mothra defending the peace of the Bug People's civilization from various monster threats, although throughout the show we see hints of a potential alien invasion alongside the arrival of the humans. Most of the Titans present are originals. However, the finale sees an alternate perspective on Godzilla waking up, with him making himself a major threat and proving actively hostile towards Mothra. At least up until another threat shows up. Seemingly out of nowhere comes an Orga attack as part of an alien invasion on the planet, which presumably began only moments after the camera cuts in the final shot of that film. Playing off of earlier setup in this series, the newly awakened Godzilla Earth ends up assisting Mothra temporarily in defending the Earth from outside forces. First, by wiping the floor with Orga, and he then destroys the ship, seemingly defeating the aliens for good. Meanwhile, Mothra has to protect the bug people for long enough for them to be able to get back to safety and run from the new Godzilla threat. They end up meeting up with the survivors from the third ship from the first film, leading to a potential team-up between the bug people and these humans in the future. The aliens seen to be controlling Orga are revealed to still be alive on another ship outside of Earth's orbit, and are still plotting. We never get a definitive look at who they are or what they look like, but we get the gist. They're bad news. Kong, the Old Empire. For our next film, we follow directly from the ending of Godzilla Earth. We find our main characters waking up in a strange place.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
The surviving few who were protected by the vehicles that they fell into Hollow Earth inside of. However, the vehicles are, as you can imagine, beyond repair, and the humans themselves aren't faring that much better, as they all emerge and find themselves on a trek for survival into lands unknown, looking for something. Our characters, who are, I remind you, still only a few years on from the actual events of the primary time that the Monsterverse had been set in, more than likely still have those Monarch files that tell them that at one point, a super long time ago now, there was an entire civilization of Iwi that lived down here in the Hollow Earth. And with them being the only source of hope, the humans will make their way towards the last known location of that base. However, they won't be alone. Following from behind is someone who is alerted by the sounds of the crashing ships, the new king of Hollow Earth. And it isn't Kong or Zuko, it's another familiar face to classic kaiju fans. Meet the Monsterverse version of Baragon. Keeping mostly to the distance, he sees the humans setting off and growls in anger before we cut back to the humans. They're traveling on foot by this point, with another camp left behind at the rubble to treat the wounded who cannot walk. In all, there are maybe like 30 to 40 total people, with our main crew from the last film making up the main ones we'll be following of those 30 to 40. Not that that number is going to be quite as high as it currently is for much longer. You see, things are going about as well as they possibly could be going in this situation when, boom, a massive sinkhole forms out of nowhere underneath the rubble, and out of it comes Baragon, having burrowed through this area. He immediately demolishes the base. The soldiers left with weapons open fire, but Baragon easily dispatches them, smashing some of them with his tail and spinning it around quickly to turn the other nearby humans to paste, leaving only our main crew led by Gia, who are already over the mountain when the attack begins, helpless to stop him. At this, Baragon notices them and roars before beginning to charge at them. The humans try to run, but of course it is useless. But right as Baragon is about to stomp them, right as he's about to catch up, he's suddenly hit out of the way by a massive axe, an axe with a familiar blue glow to it. Holding it is a massive hairy arm, but that arm isn't attached to the Kong you might expect, but rather a grown-up Zuko. Now, quick aside regarding ape species aging, for most of this I've operated under the assumption that the great apes live for maybe a couple years based off of Kong's growth spurt from Skull Island to GVK, but given GXK's addition to Titan lore with Scar King having supposedly battled Godzilla millions of years ago, it's entirely possible that Kong's just reached this age and then fucking freeze in terms of physical aging, I guess, for millions upon millions of years. On one hand, I'm tempted to say that this was actually Scar King's ancestor, and that the Scar King we see is some sort of monarchistic jackass that inherited the throne from his probably far more capable lineage, which would make sense given his over-reliance on Shima. Shima? I think it was Shima. But at the same time, it's pretty clear that isn't the intention, and far more likely the outcome is that they just forgore that Kong had, visibly aged on screen. Whoops! I mean, technically it was off-screen, but you know what I mean. Either way, I'm going to say it's been a good 100 or so years. So, long enough for Zuko to grow to about the point that Kong was at in Skull Island. So, that's kinda what we're going for here. Anywho, back to the action. Zuko, who had recognized the humans, urges them to go forward with a point as he prepares to again do battle with Baragon, which gives us our first big monster clash. It seems as if Baragon is a threat that Zuko has become at least somewhat accustomed to. As Zuko prepares to swing at him again, however, we see one last trick that Baragon had up his non-existent sleeves, when he unleashes a massive belch of fire at the young ape, leaving Zuko to have to dodge and avoid it. In the chaos, he decides it's probably best to avoid further battle with the beast for now, so he swings by, picks up the remaining humans, and brings them off towards a massive wall made of various materials like tree logs and stone, something you might almost assume had been made by humans if it weren't for the massive scale of the wall itself, looking as if it had been crafted by the Kongs themselves. Of course, this theory is soon confirmed upon entering the massive ape city. Very rudimentary huts and ape-made caves bored into the massive mountain this village was built in the side of. The great apes have made a small society for themselves in remarkably human-like fashion. We also see that amongst them, the descendants of the Iwi tribe live in a nearby settlement, also built into the mountains. A massive cavernous area with similar crystal technology we saw at play in GXK, built deep enough into the mountain to make it clear that this exact spot was fit for the gravitational shenanigans required for such technology. It seems that despite the two villages being separate, the two tribes do live together in a way where they can each benefit each other. The Iwi using their gravitational abilities to protect the greater outer wall from outside threats such as Baragon, and the Kongs providing catches from outside, which are shared in part with the Iwi who still worship the apes as they did in previous films. Sitting as the leader of the apes is Kong himself. Much older now, but still fit enough to get into a scrape if need be. Keep in mind Scar King was, pretty old. Keep in mind Scar King was ancient and he was still rather fit, so it's not a stretch to imagine that Kong is also quite agile in his old age as well. Beside him is Shima, who despite his 100 years has hardly aged at all, given her status as a full-on proper Titan in the same class as other reptilian ones we had seen who do appear to age much slower. The humans communicate with the Iwi tribe leaders, and we learn that since the emergence of the Earth Godzilla above several decades ago, many other land Titans had been pushed entirely to the Hollow Earth, whereas larger Titans had mostly stayed to the overworld, leaving smaller Titans and the apes to have Hollow Earth to themselves. Godzilla's mere existence as we have seen it threatens this balance, and monsters such as Baragon have begun hunting down on Hollow Earth instead. As such, the apes have built their defenses on a centralized location. Shima is a good counter to Baragon's primarily heat-based abilities, but due to her lack of speed means she cannot go hunting for him, as she primarily stays behind to defend the camp if he ever made an attempt on it, leaving the few ape scavengers to have to be extremely careful when looking for food. Essentially, the apes too want Godzilla dead, as their bustling society, which had been progressing very fast, has all but halted due to their current situation. The humans approach Kong and make a plea, of course spearheaded by Gia. Kong of course recognizes her and the two are able to communicate. By this point I picture the apes have progressed to having a full understanding of sign language, maybe with some minor alterations and personal spins on it over the 100 or so years that humans have basically been off-world, but Kong taught what he knew to the others, leading to easier communication between the species. It probably still has the somewhat blunt wording, but overall, Kong can basically speak to our characters now. Kong explains that as long as Baragon is a threat in the Hollow Earth, they couldn't possibly begin to think of how they might bring a fight to Godzilla. With this, the team realized they must devise a plan to defeat Baragon and ensure an alliance with the apes if they want any hope of defeating Godzilla on the surface. For the sake of stakes, however, we can't have the characters stay safe in this location forever. So of course, Baragon, who had followed Zuko and is now fully aware of the location of the ape base, sees them and plans an attack of his own, or as much of a plan as he can given his status as a largely territorial and one-minded beast. What I'm thinking is that Baragon essentially acts as the alpha of sorts for the underground, a big bully who gets what he wants and kills what he wants. As such, making him similar to if we took the body of Shima, swapped the ice out for fire, and slapped the mind of Scar King into it. A big baddie for Kong and the crew to deal with for this film. Of course though, like all big baddies, he has backup. Among several other Monsterverse original Titans, we see Baragon lead an attack on the base. Shima, of course, comes into the fray, with all the apes taking up weapons as well, leading to a truly massive brawl between ape and beast. This wouldn't necessarily be the backdrop for the big final battle, as again, Shima would be enough to drive them off, leaving the apes successful, but trashing the ape base in the process. Kong, realizing he can't sit idly by any longer, puts a plan into action. From here, the film largely follows the apes going into battle against Baragon, and the humans formulating a plan of attack for them, luring Baragon and his titans out. The apes begin another battle, this time on Baragon's terrain, but with Shima kept away in a secure location. After a long and arduous battle, Kong is able to beat Baragon up enough to get him within the range of Shima's blast and freeze him solid, with Kong and Zuko then smashing him in much the same way they did with Scar King's frozen corpse a century prior. With Baragon defeated, Kong claims his kingship over not just the apes, but the other Titans as well, once again reclaiming his title as the true Alpha, which we had last seen him claim in our previous video. Now, with the help of all the Titans and the apes, Kong, Zuko, and Shima and our crew, led by Gia, head to the overworld to take the battle to Godzilla once and for all. Mothra Kingdom Season 2. Similar to the first season, largely standalone in episodic adventures in the overworld, this time set during the events of the Kong film. We follow the bug people and the humans teaming up to defend themselves in what quickly becomes their home base, over the remains of the third ship, with the Monarch science team continuing to tinker on the destroyed vehicle in an attempt to make some more useful tech against the Titans. They also get the relay system working, allowing for communication with the humans all the way out on the other planet where the colony ship had initially landed. Mothra again acts as a sort of guardian for them all. We'll have the humans point out how odd it is that the bug people can exist, as it has seemingly only been 100 years or so, far too short of a span of time for humanity to have seriously evolved in any way. It is revealed that the bug people came about from the air that had created Godzilla Earth. After Shin Godzilla died, his death above the Earth had slightly contaminated the plant life of the Earth with a very dormant and subdued version of the Shin virus. Very noticeably slower in comparison and far less destructive and dangerous, but it is what ended up letting Godzilla survive through the Earth itself. It is why there are more than one Godzilla, with there actually being hundreds, if not thousands, of tiny Godzillas, like the 300-foot one we saw from the last film, that themselves spawned from Shin Godzilla, and the contaminated air had sped up the speed at which anything on the surface of the Earth had evolved, hence why humans and foliage were affected, but not Kong and the other Hollow Earth-based species and fauna. We see the bug people characters further fleshed out and more unique kaiju. However, with the new supersized Godzilla roaming around, he becomes the main threat of the series, with Mothra seeking to find a safe haven for them. The finale sees the team escaping the grasp of the giant Godzilla only to be hunted by two smaller Godzillas, the 300 or so foot one from the first film, and another slightly smaller one, around 250 or so feet, with the Godzillas seemingly hunting down the humans at this point. After a grand battle, Mothra is able to defeat the two of them, and the series ends with the humans and bugs discovering the parade of Titans led by Kong and Zuko, as well as the humans from a distance, and them going to meet up with them. This leads into our grand finale. Godzilla vs. Kong, Paradigm Shift, Part 1. This is it, our grand two-part finale. Despite the smaller quantity of content in this arc, the story has been much more consistent, with the same few characters carrying us through the two halves, which are now combining here. First off, following our main crew exiting the Hollow Earth through a passage created by the Titans, we see them being led on a military march of sorts. It is here that our crew, led by Gia, meet up with the crew from the second season of Mothra Kingdom. It's introduced in a way that those who didn't watch the anime can still follow along, as the familiar faces of the third ship crew introduce the bug people as worshippers of Mothra. The happy reunion doesn't last long, however, as almost immediately two Godzillas are on the team, different from the two at the ending of Mothra Kingdom, but about similar in size. They are dispatched fairly easily by the horde of Titans and apes, but it makes it clear that this is not a safe area to sit around and talk, and the humans again join Kong and reach the area of the third ship. Miraculously, everything still appears to be uncrushed thanks to it being in a spot right by a mountain. And as such, the humans are able to salvage some more stuff, specifically some mech/speeder hybrid vehicles, which the team that had been left behind had been working on during the events of the second season of Mothra Kingdom. From here, they realize they must formulate a plan to stop Godzilla. Meanwhile, Kong and the other Titans realize there are even more smaller Godzillas all converging on the base, seemingly reacting to the surge in activity from the technology that the humans are all preparing now. While Kong, Mothra, and the Titans fend off the smaller Godzillas, the humans prepare for battle. The humans set out in their mech suit thingies and battle the Godzilla horde alongside Kong and Mothra, and this is when the larger Godzilla reaches them, leading to a massive battle in which things seem bleak. The battle is lost, and Mothra is once again defeated, this time seemingly for good, as no known egg was left behind, Humans flee with what they can, and Kong and Tsuko are the only surviving Titans still with them, as all the others have either fallen or fled, with the smaller Zillas overwhelming the other Titans and apes, and Godzilla himself standing king. He takes a crack shot with his laser at Kong, but thankfully misses. Things seem like they cannot get any bleaker, and the humans use the communicator to try and reach the human colony on Kepler, only to receive a threatening message over the communicator. But not from the human colony. Rather, from the aliens seen in Mothra Kingdom's first season. They reveal their presence and tell the humans to call off their monsters, seemingly believing that Godzilla is on their side. Unable to make proper communication, the aliens grow fed up and decide to commence their attack anyway. And as Godzilla and his hordes close in, a new monster enters the fray, with the alien mothership Fortress landing on the ground in the distance. Something new is summoned, from back in time by the aliens. Something enormous and powerful enough to potentially even rival Godzilla appears. A monster from far, far, far back in time. One so powerful, it had taken the combined forces of every active ancient titan and ancient human mystics, not to kill, but just simply to seal away, using powerful artifacts to do so. Released upon the world anew is an ancient threat known only as Gigan. With this, the heroes are at their lowest. Aliens are seeking to claim the Earth as their own. Godzilla is seemingly unstoppable, and only Kong and Tsuko are still standing for the heroes. End film. Godzilla vs. Kong Paradigm Shift Part 2. That being said, jumping swiftly along to the next year's Part 2 to this drastic finale, Godzilla immediately takes the fight to Gigan, throwing himself at him headfirst. Kong and Tsuko realize they have to join in the fight as well, and the surviving apes and titans come together, leading to one final team-up between Godzilla and Kong, just like the old days. As the battle rages on in the background, the team we've been following this whole saga, combined with the key characters from the anime, all make an assault on the mothership which has landed, seemingly to give them control over Gigan. Going inside the ship, they discover these aliens are not actually aliens, but in fact humans from the far, far future. A future where this war was lost. After the battle to reclaim Earth had failed, the humans on the colony slowly withered away, with only a few surviving long-term, thanks to the regrowable but limited stocks of food. Eventually, they evolved, not thanks to the Shin virus, but rather due to the passage of a very long amount of time, and developed new technologies with what they had. But life was still miserable. And so, using time travel, they sought to reclaim the Earth. However, they realized that trying to do so at any point that would directly impact their own timelines would prove fatal, as the butterfly effect would simply wipe themselves out. So, the only way to do it was seemingly to claim the Earth at this point in time. Their first expedition had failed, as the Earth was too well guarded, immediately after the events of Shin. There were too many Titans in the overworld to deal with using a single Titan they could control, like Gigan, so they waited for Godzilla instead to scare them underground. But then they realized he had become too powerful and would simply shoot their mothership out of the sky. So they waited for the perfect opportunity, when the humans made their first attempt at reclaiming the Earth. While Godzilla was busy shooting down the first and second ships of the initial armada, the alien ships slipped in. The ones we saw in the first season of Mothra Kingdom was simply a diversion ship, and the actual mothership had landed far off and begun preparations for this battle. By expertly going back in time and undoing the bonds of each of the artifacts that had sealed Gigan initially over time, they had held the final one, and with its opening, Gigan himself was freed and under their control. With Godzilla being the only major Titan of note and the other mini-Zillas just being part of a single hive mind as him, cutting off the head, so to speak, would be enough to defeat all of them. And from there, Kong and the other Titans would be easy pickings. With all of this revealed, the aliens, which call themselves the New Humans, say they must kill the rest of the crew present here so that their own timeline can continue to come about, and that they can reclaim the Earth while their ancestors still believe it is ruled by the unstoppable Godzilla. Of course, Gigan and the team cannot let this happen. Together, the humans storm the base while the Titan battle rages on outside, getting progressively more and more intense. At this point, we begin to see Godzilla and Kong almost seem to bond a bit more in recreating fighting moves that they had used together in the past. As the humans continue their attack, they manage to get access to the time room. Outside, however, things are not going well. As Gigan manages to gravely wound Kong and Godzilla, pretty much all the other Titans and apes are destroyed, and Tsuko is eventually the last one standing. But he isn't alone enough, and things are bleak. With seemingly no options left to turn to, the humans make a drastic decision. They can go back in time and prevent the artifacts from being activated throughout time. they can stop Bacon from ever being summoned, and this will also cause a grandfather paradox, as if they go back in time to stop Bacon and succeed, causing Bacon to have never appeared, they themselves will disappear, as they never would have gone back in time in the first place without Bacon, thusly creating a paradox. Are you confused yet? As such, they decide they need to bring the artifacts from back in time after they have been activated, one by one, and deactivate them in real time, sealing Bacon here. As Bacon unleashes his final seemingly fatal attack on Godzilla, Kong, and Zuko, the human teams jump into the portal and into the unknown. Oh, also I lied, this finale is actually a trilogy. Haha, JK, get lolled on. Godzilla vs. Kong, Paradigm Shift, Part 3. And I swear this is actually the last one. Okay, now, for real, this time is the final movie in my pitch for the Monsterverse. It's all been leading here. Going off of where the artifacts were activated, the humans find that the new humans had at least in part planned for this and activated each of them in different time periods, before leaving them in situations they wouldn't survive, requiring each team to go back into particularly selected dangerous moments in Monsterverse history to reclaim the artifacts and seal away Bacon. So, yeah, we're doing Endgame. Yeah, it's a bit, unoriginal in concept, but hear me out. By this point, pretty much every monster has been used up. That's quite literally the point of the present timeline, is that they are all dead. Bringing back Ghidorah for the 50th time isn't satisfying if it's just undoing his deaths over and over. Unless, of course, we aren't undoing his deaths. We're just revisiting him beforehand. It might be taking a major plot point from Endgame, but there's a reason that plot point was so smart to begin with. It allows us to revisit key moments from the Monsterverse's long history and still contribute to the overall plot. Perfect for the finale to a cinematic universe. It just sucks that Endgame wasn't the finale to its. So, anyway, of the 6 artifacts required, 1 is already in the present and was the final activated, ultimately freeing Bacon. All 6 need to be reactivated to seal him again, and all need to be brought back to the same point in the future after their initial activation to do so. As such, they must be reclaimed in their last known positions, post-activation, before they become lost forever via Titan Carnage burying them or making them otherwise impossible to find in the present. That being said, the new humans specifically activated them at very dangerous points so that if somehow the humans tried to stop them, it would be near impossible. Thusly, choosing key battles as the backdrop to activate them, meaning our characters have to revisit key points in the Monsterverse's history. Each of the 5 remaining artifacts is at 1, the ancient Titan War between the Kong species and the Godzilla species. 2, the Battle of San Francisco in Godzilla 2014. 3, the Washington, D.C. battle in King of the Monsters in 2019. 4, the final battle in our version of Final Wars. And finally 5, the final battle in Godzilla vs. Kong, Shin. The main bulk of the film sees the heroes accessing each of these 5 points in the midst of the grand battles we've already seen, and nearly getting stomped on by the resident monsters present. The last 4 are each battles we would have seen on screen by this point, so I think going over the ancient Titan War is a more interesting approach. The original Scar King, or just Scar King if you subscribe to the idea that this dude is millions of years old, leads a bloody battle against the Godzilla species, Gojira's versus apes. Godzilla leads on his team's side while the Scar King is the leader of the other, and the enslaved Shima under his control. We can assume that Mothra and the Mutos were also involved to some capacity, so having some of those guys stomping around the battlefield certainly wouldn't hurt. As for the other 4 battles, it would largely just be a matter of seeing them from different angles and perspectives than we initially did. But I think having moments where the Titans in question notice the interlopers and have a go or two at them between battling each other would be fun, and add some more tension. In the end, each of the artifacts is collected by the 5 different points of the team and recollected in the modern day, and on the cusp of Bacon unleashing his ultimate attack, the artifacts are activated, which ultimately drains Bacon and seals him away. But not before Bacon manages to slip out a massive, slow-moving blast of energy right at the injured Kong. In slow motion, things look bleak. And then, Godzilla jumps in the way of it and tanks the hit, destroying himself and saving Kong. As Godzilla is slowly consumed by the blast, he gives Kong a look that almost seems to resemble the look he gave him at the ending of GVK, just with a slightly less fuck you attitude in it. A look reminiscent of when the 2 Titans weren't necessarily friends, but didn't have to be enemies either. With that, Godzilla dies. The final Godzilla dies. Kong raises his axe into the sky and roars. Zuko, Shima, and all the surviving apes and titans follow suit. balance is restored, and the Earth is once again safe, or at least as safe as it was ever going to be. With that, we get a montage. The colony ship packs everything up and heads back to Earth. Meanwhile, the team on Earth begins to prepare. The great apes can once again wander the Hollow Earth freely. The bug people discover another Mothra egg hidden in a now far more ancient Mothra temple we had seen all the way back in King of the Monsters. The other Titans, obeying Kong, will go about and do same things we saw them doing under Godzilla's rule, the ending of King of the Monsters. Zuko takes over as the full-time king of Hollow Earth, while Kong takes to the land above to watch over. The humans set up a brand new settlement with the bug people also joining. The humans don't know if the air will still result in them also evolving along a similar track to the bug people, or not, but frankly, right now that's the least of their worries, considering it's basically just cosmetic. This is it. This is the happy ending. The new human ship continues to exist. Whether this means that the current humans will one day become them is unclear, or maybe the universe will snap under itself at any second in a paradox. I'm sure if a reboot ever happens, that'll be the excuse. But as far as everyone is concerned, they won. We end the Monsterverse with Kong fashioning a brand new double-sided battle axe with the plates from Godzilla, who has already begun to mold into the Earth as an actual mountain. Kong climbs atop it and lets out a loud roar as the camera pulls back, showing Titans and human settlements all around him. Conclusion. So, what did you think? Look, I want to be straight up honest with you. This is in no way going to actually happen. Nothing even remotely close to it. This is pure fan fiction. But you know what? For as vague as some bits are, I'm happy with it. The Monsterverse is a series that can go in a lot of directions, so maybe it's not that absurd to picture a timeline where this occurs, but in all likelihood, we went off the rails with the middle half of video 1. But I'm still super excited for what it will eventually bring. We already know more Apple TV Plus spin-offs are in the works, alongside Monarch's second season, which I stand by will be set during King of the Monsters, and if I'm wrong, I will eat my pants live on stream. We've got the next film slated for 2027, so they're taking their time with it, and a Kong-centered video game with this creepy-eye motherfucker going to be in it. I've heard the game will be from the perspective of humans trying to survive a monster attack, and I've heard some people disappointed by this, but I'm not gonna lie, that's like my dream kaiju game pitch, just a human-level perspective against these godlike giants clashing above, so I'm super excited for this, and really hope it's good and not just some, the microtransaction-riddled fest, which is unfortunately likely with the current state of the gaming industry, but that's a conversation for another time. But for this saga, this storyline I've presented to you, that's it. That being said, before we go, I want to take a look back at what we've created. So, what exactly is our custom Monsterverse? I've split everything up nicely into 4 arcs for each storyline, so what have we got? Arc 1, Monsters Are Real. 2014, Godzilla. 2017, Kong Skull Island. 2019, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. 2021, Godzilla vs. Kong. 2023, Skull Island, Season 1. 2023, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Season 1. 2024, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Arc 2, Rise of the Titans. 2025, Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, Season 2. 2027, Godzilla x Kong, The Destroyah Dynasty. 2028, Godzilla Dawn of Gigan. 2030, Kong, Hollow Earth. 2031, Godzilla x Kong, Destroy All Monsters. 2032, Godzilla x Kong, Final Wars. Arc 3, The Fall of Humanity. 2034, Monarch G-Team, Season 1. 2035, Godzilla, Biohazard. 2036, Monarch G-Team, Season 2. 2037, King Kong. 2037, Rodan, Season 1. 2038, Mothra, Operation Battra. 2038, Monarch G-Team, Season 3. 2039, Godzilla, All Out Attack. 2040, Godzilla vs. King Kong, Shin. Arc 4, Planet of the Monsters. 2042, Godzilla, Earth. 2042, Mothra Kingdom, Season 1. 2043, Kong, The Old Empire. 2043, Mothra Kingdom Season 2. 2044, Godzilla vs. Kong Paradigm Shift Part 1. 2045, Godzilla vs. Kong Paradigm Shift Part 2. And 2046, Godzilla vs. Kong Paradigm Shift Part 3. I don't think I've said Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong and all that much in a single sitting before, but dear God. So in total, that gives us 6 Godzilla solo films, 4 solo Kong films plus a solo show, 9 crossover films, a total of 20 movies, and 9 seasons of different TV series across a total span of 32 years. A bit insane, but just my type of insanity. Now, despite this being the ending to my Monsterverse pitch trilogy, it's not the end of Monsterverse content on this channel, as I do fully intend to cover more of the franchise in the future. In particular, that upcoming Kong game, which exists almost entirely in the lands of speculation right now. But just as long as it isn't some crappy cash-grabby mobile game or something along those lines, I'll check it out and report back here with my findings. Hell, I might even stream the game, so subscribe if that sounds interesting. Also, as always, comment down below what was your favorite part of the pitch saga. What would you have done differently? What would be your dream Monsterverse pitch? That stuff is so much fun to read, so go super in-depth on your Mothra x Godzilla fanfictions down below. And this time, well, let's make that X accurate, eh? But I'm tired now, and I've certainly been talking for too long, so I'm gonna take my leave. I'll leave you all with this absolutely insane pitch. Stomp on out of here. Peace.